Welcome to the Brand and Market Podcast, where branding clarity meets marketing strategy. I'm your host, Allie Haney, founder of Brand and Market, a boutique agency dedicated to helping small businesses craft intentional brands and effective marketing plans. Each week, I share practical tips and insights to help you, especially those of you in real estate-related industries, build a standout brand to attract your brand's biggest fans. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of the Brand and Market Podcast. Today, I have a brand designer guest on. Her name is Kristina, and she is the founder of Gem Creative. I was trying to think back to how exactly I came across Kristina online first, because we've never met in real life. And I think it came down to a fake or pretend brand suite that she had created. I'm a Harry Potter fan, for those of you guys who don't know that already. I'm a Gryffindor. And so when I saw that she had created this mock coffee shop that was Harry Potter themed, I just was enamored with her creativity and her mind. And I started following her after that. And since then, our paths have crossed multiple times. She hosted a entrepreneurial spirit week that was so fun. I was able to participate in all 5 days of that. So just again, another testament to her creativity, which is going to be a large through line in today's conversation. But so excited to have her introduce herself. Kristina, I will give you the floor. Tell us more about yourself and Gem Creative.
Thank you for that intro. I've loved how we've connected on some of my most random ideas, like some of my most creative, unconventional kinds of ideas, because that is what I'm so passionate about when it comes to branding and just like business in general, is leaning into creativity in ways that you don't expect can sometimes lead to really meaningful connections. I've created a lot of different fake brands from all different movies. And in general, my approach to branding is very much like finding the hidden gems. That's partially why my business name is so relevant, is I really love to pull out the things that make people special, that make businesses special, that are tied to the message that businesses want to be sending, that showcase the level of a high level of experience that people can get. And I like to pull those things out and showcase them through branding. And I'm also a DIY educator. So I don't just design brands for other people. I've recently, this past year, introduced a DIY course for non-designers to learn how to improve their own approach to DIY branding, because there are a lot of people in that DIY stage using things like Canva. And so, yeah, I love what I do. I'm so excited to be here and in this conversation and dig into more of like my perspectives on things.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but you are actually you went to school to be a graphic designer, right?
Yes.
So was there anything in between college and Gem Creative, or did you start your own business and go for it from the start?
Yeah, so I kind of disqualified myself from entrepreneurship pretty early in like my college career because it sounded so intimidating, and just didn't think I was that cut out for that. Like I genuinely was like, that's not for me. I remember hearing a guest came into one of our college classes to talk about owning your own business. And I was like, nope, I wanted to work for corporate or just like work for a design company of some kind. And I ended up working for a nonprofit doing event branding and stayed with them for 5 years. It was honestly a really, really cool job where I got to be super creative in a fast-paced environment. And our brands that we built were very experiential, like very much like the whole experience is part of the brand, not just the logo for the brand itself. So that really shaped my approach to branding, I would say, differently than college, because college was all about like learning Adobe and learning skills, whereas this was like learning how to brand an experience, which ties right into like my perspective on branding now in business, is like, how can we showcase the experience of what it's like to work with you through your branding?
That's incredible. I didn't know that you had that background, but like you said, it just makes sense now that is such a focus for you when you're working with your brand clients. So that kind of brings me to my first question for you is I want to know how you go through and pull out that experience? Whenever you're working with a like full brand design client, they want the full shebang. How do you go through and find those hidden gems for them?
So the creative direction phase, which is the first part of every process, if someone's going to work with me on everything, like go all in on my larger package, that phase alone lasts 1 month, 4 weeks. I get to know all angles of a business as deeply as I can, and I spend time really studying the business. So from a kickoff call where I ask all different questions on getting to know the backstory of why they started their business, getting to know what they know about their customers, and I also take a look at their customer testimonials. I sometimes will do surveys, which I also teach my students how to do, so that we can really understand what aspects about this brand and about this business are making an impact already and are already meaningful to people, whether or not they even realize it. And so that I also pay attention to their peers in their industry. So other people they're kind of familiar with that do similar things. I want to make sure that we are aware of what the industry is doing, if there are trends that I need to be aware of to make sure that we can position them a little bit differently and visually a little bit differently. And so I can't help but have a very widespread, I guess, view on what can play into branding. I can't separate just like a logo design from everything else that can play into branding. I really want to understand on the deepest level what makes them so special and impactful.
Yeah, I saw that you recently posted on Instagram about how that like it's funny that you use the word marinate because I use that word a lot too. I'm a processor, kind of a slow processor at that. So it's really interesting that we have that in common, but I love that that's almost like one of your brand differentiators is that you're not there to quickly churn out, the end product. You're there to really make sure that it's deep and meaningful and going to be impactful for their audience as well.
I've always found that the best ideas come out of really spending time marinating on it. Like it gives me more room to see what's possible. Whereas if I'm just trying to turn something out and move through it quickly, I might look back on it in a couple days and be like, oh, wait, well, what about this? I love having space to marinate.
So, what are some ways that the branded market audience could bring that same way of thinking, that 4 week creative direction time, into their own brands as either a realtor or a short term rental owner?
So, my first thought is don't underestimate what can be used to bring recognition and bring connection through your brand. I think sometimes people think professionalism it is I think people think it's more set in stone than it needs to be, whereas I think actually showcasing your version of professionalism is actually, I think, becoming more and more ambiguous and open to more nuances and personalizations than ever nowadays. Maybe in the real estate industry, there are potentially typical ways in which people market themselves within that space that maybe leans on like very, very professional feel, where I think there's opportunity to get clever and creative and kind of outside the box with the kinds of things that people can connect with a realtor on, or someone in that space on. So if I were to be working with someone in the early stages, I would want to be checking testimonials. And if there aren't really a lot of testimonials, I would want to work with them to essentially go through like a survey of some kind to get some perspectives from people that know their work ethic and know what it's like to go through the process of, buying a house or whatever it is with them, and see if there's something, see if there's a gem there, see if there's something about their personality that person brings up, or about how they made them feel, or some special moment or memory that they had that literally can't be replicated by any other person because of that unique exchange. I would be paying attention to what people are already kind of saying and try to lean into that even more.
Yeah, that makes sense. Definitely a trend in real estate world to start harnessing like a personal brand. So finding what makes you different than everybody else, especially in a saturated market. How about for like short-term rental owners? Because it's not necessarily about the owner themselves, right? So it's less of a personal brand and for lack of a better word, I guess a corporate brand, even though if, a short-term rental owner might only own one or two properties, right? But it could be about, like the location that they're in. Did you say you were in Austin?
I'm in San Antonio.
San Antonio. Okay. So in my head, like the first thing that I think of when I think of Texas is Austin and like the river walks and like the arts, district and stuff like that. So like building a brand around one small piece of like perhaps like where they are.
There's a little different, I guess, approach to marketing with that, where people are discovering them on Airbnb, where it's not necessarily like a face that they're running into. I'm typically on social media where you're running into like people and personal brands that way. But I know that there is an increase in people marketing their Airbnbs via social media, not just like not just being found on like Airbnb.com. What's something that I notice with Airbnbs is I'm really interested sometimes in that space and like maybe what that owner of that space enjoys about their area, like you're just saying, but also like their style, like the way that an Airbnb is styled can sometimes tell me a little bit about like this person's attention to detail or this person's interests, which I personally, as an artist, I'm always really drawn to unique kinds of spaces. And when I'm looking at Airbnbs, I'm like paying attention to like aesthetics and things like that and little personalizations, which I know that that's not necessarily design related, graphic design related, but it is, I guess, interiors can be part of a brand experience. Like behind me right now is a cork board with all this stuff pinned on it, and people remember me and my content and like have told me that cork boards make them think of me. And so like spaces and environments are part of that brand building as well. I think I would ask a follow-up question to you with rental owners. Are they marketing on social media like through who they are along with Airbnb?
Yes. Yeah. So that's what we're going for is so that they have a way to create a brand outside of just the Airbnb platform because ultimately you can create a business with short-term rentals that is worth a lot more if you have that brand attached to it, the brand recognition. So that's where I was going with that for sure. Bringing in that client experience, bringing in the guest experience and seeing how you can dive deeper than just a logo to create that overall short-term rental brand.
And drawing people into that experience, like giving them a glimpse of what that experience is like before they buy is huge. I'm thinking of an example. I don't know if you're familiar with Xanthi Appleyard from O Sierra Creative, but her and her husband own a brand called Let's Layover, and it's an Airbnb. I think it's on Airbnb, but it's a rental in Mexico, and they have a whole Instagram page for it. They themselves talk about it on their own accounts and kind of send people to that. She is very, very good at building a brand around who she is and making those connections as someone who really enjoys it's in Mexico. So like they really enjoy, I don't remember what city it is, but that area, their branding has some kind of like tropical lean to it. Very just like laid back, leisurely. Leisure is a big word that she uses. And you see that all through her lifestyle, but also in the way that they talk about in their messaging and in their content around layover. That's actually a really good example for anyone who wants to see like a real life, I guess, example of someone who's done this really successfully in that industry. That's a really good Instagram account to take a look at.
Very cool. I haven't heard of them, so I will definitely give them a follow at the end of this interview. It's really clear though that you are just an overall creative person and I feel like admiration and also a little bit of envy because I feel like I balance the creative like not type A and type B but like the left side brain and right side brain pretty well, but sometimes I wish I could get more over to the creative side of things. So walk me through how as a brand designer you can keep that inspiration fresh?
I love this question because I think we underestimate all the inspiration that's around us at all times, and not on a screen, like not on Pinterest, not on Instagram, but in our homes and in our cities, or in our, our where we live. The world is my inspiration. Like my life and my experiences, my favorite TV shows, my favorite artists and musicians. There's so much to pull from that fuels my creativity on so many levels. Scrolling Instagram and looking at Pinterest is actually such a small portion of the inspiration that's available to us at all times. And typically, what I recommend to anyone who, whether it's DIYing or branding, don't look at Pinterest first, don't look at Instagram first, don't look at your peers first for inspiration. Look around you, gather ideas that way, and then after that, use Pinterest as a search tool to help you visualize ideas that came from elsewhere. Again, going back to like that metaphor of hidden gems, I love treating my whole life that way. Like leaving my house in the afternoon to go find a new coffee shop in the city, and that's my little hidden gem discovery of the day. And I love seeing the aesthetics and how they've styled the coffee shop. And I love thrifting and finding the hidden gems at the thrift store. And sometimes I'll find like I recently found a sweater that is my brand color, and that was like a special little excursion for me to embody like my brand in a different way, in my clothing. Doing things that bring you joy, there's so much creative inspiration just like waiting to be discovered in those things.
That's so funny that you're like, don't go to Pinterest, because that's almost always, from what I've personally experienced, like for myself, when I went to go do my rebrand recently, like last August, all the way to even interacting with clients. Like I will have clients send me Pinterest boards all the time with inspo. Now, I don't know how they got that inspo initially, but I definitely feel like it takes a lot of self-awareness to be able to take a step back from like a digital platform to be able to draw the inspiration from your own life, which is kind of sounds sad that I said now that I said it out loud. But yeah, even like going into your closet and seeing the colors that are already there, because that's what you naturally gravitate towards anyway, you know?
Exactly, yeah. And I have nothing against Pinterest. In fact, I use Pinterest all the time. Like I love Pinterest. It's a fantastic tool, and it's super super helpful when I'm trying to communicate ideas to clients before I actually design things. It's kind of like the second step. It's not like the first step that I take. It's like the once I've let myself freely kind of ideate on something, then Pinterest helps me narrow that down and find visuals to help communicate that.
Absolutely. And I love that you said, so what I anticipated your answer to be was something to do with travel. And I didn't hear the word travel come out of your mouth at all. But it's funny because I know you online, I know that like travel is a part of your life, but you just said I get inspiration from my life. So it's just interesting to me the way that you phrased it, and how like it can literally come from like anywhere, like you said, the coffee shop or the airplane or the movies that you watch.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you said travel. And that's actually, I forgot to mention that, but yeah, totally. Like my own rebrand, when I rebranded Gem Creative Co. a few years ago, I kind of like took myself through the same process that I do with clients. And I got a lot of inspiration from my Spain trip, like the colors, the mosaic like, shapes, and being in a totally brand new environment definitely is a boost of creativity for sure. I'm glad that you brought that up, and I love that you remembered that, because yeah, I mean, there's literally no end to what can inspire creative ideas. And that is definitely one of those things that I lean into sometimes.
That is so fun. This podcast interview feels like a stained glass window that I've always admired your brand from afar, and now I'm getting to see like the little pieces of the stained glass, like the trip to Spain and your time at the event coordination off, like doing branding for them. It's really, really, I'm glad to see this insight. Building a brand boils down to being liked, known, and ultimately trusted by your clients and customers. But let's first focus on being known. Have you heard the statistic about how a potential customer needs to encounter a brand 7 or more times before purchasing from them? Now, let me ask you this. What if a potential customer has encountered your brand 7 times, but doesn't realize it's the same brand? That means you've been putting in a whole lot of work into marketing your business, but the brand isn't consistent enough to land the sale because they don't know it's you. Consistency while building a brand is so important to top line sales. In fact, it could increase them by 33%. Yes, you could be missing out on a third of your sales because people don't know your business is your business. Fix all of this confusion by creating a consistent and cohesive brand across all client touchpoints using the Brand Strategy Framework mini course. This is where we'll walk through all the foundations of a solid brand, then audit your existing brand to finally implement the changes that need to be made in order to get you the brand you want and deserve. This DIY style course is perfect for the entrepreneur who's working on a budget but knows that something within their business doesn't quite hit right. Head to the Brand Strategy Framework course link in the show notes to take the next step in your brand's journey. I want to dive into your brand ed course. And I know that you created the full course all around DIYing your brand, especially this is targeted towards semi new business owners, correct?
No, actually, no, which was interesting to
Oh,
discover.
okay. Well, educate me then. Tell me more
Yeah.
about brand ed.
So I started brand ed because I wanted to fill the gap between custom and DIY, where there's a lot of people that are DIYing who aren't ready for custom branding, but they know that there's probably a better way to do it. They just don't know how. And they're not in a place to spend, thousands of dollars, multiple thousands of dollars on like custom branding, which tends to be typically in my industry, if you hire someone who's really good at what they do, they're gonna charge multiple thousands of dollars to get it done. So with brand ed, it was like, okay, like, wait, I can just show people how to use Canva in a way that I would do it if I were working in it. I can walk people through a strategic process the way that a brand strategist would think through it and teach them how to almost be like a creative director for their own brands, almost like as an in-between stage where it's like, okay, maybe 4 years from now you'll hire a designer to do it for you, but for now this is like a really great option in between to do branding and build branding in a way that you're really proud of. And what surprised me is there's actually a lot of people who've been in business for years who actually don't want to eventually hire someone to do it because they like doing it themselves. So yes, there are people that join my programs who want to save money and aren't ready yet to hire someone, but I'm finding that there's equally the same amount of people, if not more, who are drawn to my program because they like doing it. They just don't have the tools or the framework for how to do it well. Like, so I had a photographer join, and she's very, very creative in her photography, just didn't necessarily have a framework for branding. And it was basically just like, I love being the creative director of my own brand. Like, I love being able to do this myself. And it's also a little bit of like, it's enjoyable. It's a process that if you're open, if you have time for it, and if you genuinely like being creative in that way, it's fun. And it's something that's actually sometimes it's good to keep it like in-house rather than take it. Obviously, I have a lot of clients that don't want to keep it in-house and they want to hire me to do it for them and support them through it. But it was interesting discovering that. It was interesting finding out that there's a whole group of entrepreneurs who are DIYing because they want to, you know?
Absolutely. So, what triggered the shift in perspective for you from like being very, very pro hiring a designer at some point in your business to kind of not even just accommodating the DIYer, but celebrating the DIYer? What triggered that shift?
That was a process because, of course, early on, I was trying to sell branding services where a lot of my messaging, a lot of my marketing was around, oh, like I can do it better because I'm the brand designer. And like, if you're sick of DIYing, like this is the time to hire someone to do it for you. And a lot of my messaging was around that theme and concept of like DIY only gets you so far. And while like there is truth in like how detailed you can get with branding, like I will always be able to do more like detailed work in my, design programs. It's not true that like it's an essential. Like you don't necessarily need to hire a brand designer. Like some businesses can be successful with DIYing. It's not hurting them. I think that shift where that really came from was I had been DIYing my own marketing for, I've been taking programs and learning from mentors how to do marketing on my own for years now, since I started my business, even before that. And I've benefited so much from learning about what I'm not an expert in. And it's brought some of the best business realizations, learning from other experts in marketing. This is how you can do it. This is how you can do it the right way, or at least better than I was doing it before. And it almost felt hypocritical to be so invested in my own DIY marketing, like saying that you can't DIY your branding. Like it felt hypocritical that clicked for me, where I was like, wait a minute, like if there are so many mentorships out there for marketing, I have the ability to do it myself without hiring someone. Like, why can't I create that for someone else in the branding space? And there's this gap there. There's really no one teaching branding to DIYers, at least. And once that clicked for me, where it was like, wait a minute, I can be the brand tutor. I can be the brand mentor, the same way that I hire marketing mentors. I started to see so much room for me to support people in a way that was missing in the market. And from there, I mean, it was just realizing like how much creativity is within people that aren't designers. Like, we're all creative beings, and creativity can be nourished and nurtured and taught. And I think that's also a misconception, is like sometimes people assume you can't necessarily like teach it, you're just like born with it. And I think that there are ways to improve creative skills no matter where you're at, no matter how much creativity you think you have.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like evolution of your brand that I think is like the main gem that I want to take out of this, is that it's okay to change the way you see something or change the way that you perceive something, not only internally but also publicly. Like, you created an entire DIY brand ed course around that shift in perspective. So that kind of brings me to my next question is, I see now as Gem Creative Co. as your ultimate, like the overarching umbrella brand, but under that you have the brand ed course. So how do you keep this sub brand, so to speak, in line with the larger brand of Gem Creative?
I love this question, especially because I'm currently working on a bonus lesson for my course to talk about sub brands and to talk about like offer branding. Because technically, like the sub brand of brand ed, I'm finding that it's helpful to sometimes have like a little brand around specific offers. And with brand ed, the way that I went about that was I leaned into a personality trait of mine that was already something that existed within my overarching umbrella brand, but I like leaned into it harder and like more specifically for brand ed. And so if you think about my overarching umbrella brand, there's like some themes that I lean into, such as the gems. I lean into my sense of curiosity. So there's like some symbolism around that. And the personality trait of like nerdiness. I like to talk about how nerdy I've always been. And nerdiness became, I guess, like the crux of my sub brand for brand ed. Is I went deep into like, I'm such a nerd, and I was also such a school like a nerd at school. And so I ran with this education like school theme around my nerdy personality, and used that to communicate what my course is. It's very like, I took photos in a school, and it was my sister-in-law's school, and like there's all the language around it I use is like classes in session and join class of 2025, and my alumni like graduating class. Like the language is very branded to that education like school theme. The visuals are branded to that school theme, and it all came from this personality trait of mine, which is being a nerd. And I actually used to tutor in college. So like, in my past, the only education experience I had ever had in my past was being a tutor at my school. And so sometimes with brand ed, I'll call myself a brand tutor. I'm still using my personal brand as inspiration for this sub brand. I'm just like honing in on a more specific part of my personality for the sub brand.
Absolutely. It's like an immersive experience that you kind of mentioned before in your first job outside of college. Like every part of that experience of being in brand ed has something to do with school or with education, with I think even like down to the Notion notebook, right? That you have that you give your students. That is so cool to kind of find that like one gym within the greater like gym field.
No,
Those
yeah, that's like such a good way to put it. I love that you're stringing through my gem symbolism and like that whole concept throughout this conversation because, yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. It doesn't like, even though it is a little bit different than like my overarching umbrella brand, I still used some of the colors that were in my umbrella brand and just like tweaked things a little bit. And I used photos and things and new graphics. I will say, like, not every business that does sub brands needs to go super extreme and making things look really different or making things feel like its own branded world. Like the reason why I went a little bit more literal with like that branded world is because I'm a brand person. Like I go all in with like creating these totally different kind of like branded worlds where sometimes like a sub brand can feel more similar to the overarching umbrella brand, and maybe like you use a specific color or you use one of your fonts for one of the offers and maybe a different font for a different offer, and there's ways to go about like sub brands or offer branding that doesn't veer off as much but is a little bit more similar. And I think that that's totally open to whatever makes sense for that business and brand. For me, it makes sense to go really unique with each of my sub brands, whereas others might want it to feel more like it belongs to the same family.
Yeah, that makes sense. Actually, what kind of triggered for me in my mind when you said that was Starbucks. They have the different seasonal menus. So like for fall, they have slightly different colors, but still stay true to that like green, the Starbucks green versus, their spring colors or their nitro colors or whatever it might be. So it's kind of nice to hear from a brand designer that like we have permission to travel a little bit outside of those 5 to 6 colors in our color palette to be able to harness or really differentiate a specific offer if/when we need to.
It can be fun. Like it can bring a kind of a fresh energy into things too.
Absolutely. Okay, so final question I have for you, Kristina. What is your number one piece of advice for our listeners to be the best in their brand and in their market?
I would say being self-aware, being really, really aware of the strengths that you bring to the table and always finding ways to communicate that. And then at the same time, being very aware of your industry as a whole so that you know what you're doing differently from everybody else.
I've never met a situation where self-awareness is a bad thing. So I think we can take that not only in our brand and our market, but also in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, for sure. You'll find so many gems.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much, Kristina, for being a guest on the Branded Market podcast. I would love for you to share with our audience ways that they can connect with you, and I will link all of that for everyone in the show notes.
Yeah, so on Instagram, that's where I'm most active at Gem Creative Co. And then the same is for Threads at Gem Creative Co. I'm also pretty active on Threads. I love it over there. It's very like off the cuff, and I can
It
like,
is.
yeah, it's fun over there. My website is gemcreative.co.
Perfect. Thank you again so much, Kristina.
Thank you for having me, Allie. This was so fun.
Of course.
You just completed another episode of the Branded Market Podcast. If you found this helpful, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find this show and so that you never miss an episode. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for all the resources mentioned today. See you next Wednesday, and as always, I'm here cheering you on as you build your dream brand and business.